following podcast contains language that may be inappropriate for younger listeners and covers topics that could be controversial or offensive to some. If you're the former, I'm sorry. If you're the latter, I'm sorry for you. Rated M for mature.
Hello, friend. We're back. Or more specifically, I'm back and you came back to listen again. And I appreciate it. Hopefully, you enjoyed the first episode for as jumbled and, for lack of a better term, amateurish it was. But we'll get better, fingers crossed. So here we are, episode 2. And this will probably be the last time outside of any major milestones that I actually reference the episode number. Just because this is not a serialized podcast, it's more episodic. People should be able to jump in and jump out. Each one is kind of a standalone. We won't be telling an overarching story. Could be an overarching journey, but really no order people need to listen to it in. I do want to call out this as episode 2, though, since I did call out the first one as the premiere episode and just wanted to give a little bit of backstory. So if you remember in the first one, if you have not listened to it, feel free to jump back, listen, and come back and jump back in. I referenced the fact that I was a couple weeks out from being 50 at the time of recording that one. We're roughly a month and a half later. So a decent amount of time has passed since that one was recorded, and I am recording this episode. And the reason for that was prior to publishing, I shared it out with a select group of family and friends and allowed them to share out to some family and friends to solicit some feedback, get some input, see if this was something that potentially was worth looking into, pursuing, going. The fact that we're here would say that the overall answer was yes, worth giving it a shot. But there was some feedback given, and I made a decision to release the premiere episode in its original form, the same way it was sent out to people to actually listen to and give me some feedback on. So hopefully throughout the course of this episode, you'll notice where that feedback was applied with some of the changes, and maybe you'll be able to pull it out and maybe you won't. I think some will be pretty obvious if you listen to the intros. The intros are slightly different. More of a live read jump in versus the canned intro. My wife was very quick to point out very vocally that the applause people did not like. I found it amusing, but it's gone, and we'll go with this moving forward where I kind of jump in over the fade out of the music. I would like to say that the music did get rave reviews, so kudos to you and your appreciation for royalty-free generic music as a intro piece. Some of the feedback was things that I had noticed myself and was very critical of. The very jumbled nature of the first section of the premiere episode versus what I felt was a better flow of the second. A lot of that had to do with the way that I prepared, or in that particular case, really didn't prepare for the episode. Was not shocking to get the feedback that I got. And it was still very much appreciated, though, even if it was just reinforcing something that I had heard when I listened to it myself. So I do want to call out a specific piece of feedback that I received. So a friend of mine who you will probably see as a recurring guest on this over time shared it with his father. And his dad, much like many of you said, he liked the music, but that I should, quote, be more funny, unquote. So, Mr. Kerr, I'm not real sure if every episode I'll be more funny, but I will make an effort. It will probably come in the form of smart-ass comments or just pretty basic jackassery, if that's even a word. Doubtful that it is. But I'm probably pretty good at being snide or snarky, and a lot of times that makes people laugh. I know it makes me laugh. Hopefully you'll get some enjoyment out of it too. But I appreciate you taking the time, listening, and providing some feedback. So enough about that. Outside of, I think as this moves on, you'll notice some of the other things, hopefully, and it'll clean this up, make it flow a little better, maybe add to the overall enjoyment or ease of listening. But with that being said, let's move into today's actual topic. And I want to talk about politics. Now, calm down, calm down. I know you're all ready to send me a bunch of comments, tell me how I'm a MAGA Republican or a woke liberal or suffer from some kind of white guilt, whatever the case may be. So take a deep breath. I don't want to talk about ideology. Although at some point we may get into that, today that's not it. I want to talk about the system in general and why I think it's broken and potentially some things we could do to fix it. And just because it's very topical going into this year, I want to start with one that, again, may potentially get some people ready to start typing in the comments and send me some feedback. Let's talk about age limits. We have what appears to be two frontrunner candidates for president in our current commander-in-chief, President Biden, and former President Trump preparing to run. Both are on the downside of the hill, right? They're not climbing to the middle age mark. They are well past the middle and on their way coasting down the other side and at a pretty steady clip. And I don't know that, in my opinion, that should be people that we have up there as potential options to lead the nation. And before you start screaming ageist or how dare you say someone in their late 70s or 80s can't lead the country, we already have age limits as it pertains to the president of the United States. They're just biased against young people. You have to be 35 years old to run for president. And why is that? Why do we say, 30 years old, you can't lead the nation, but at 35, you're ready to get it done? But I can't make the comment to say at 80, you're no longer prepared to be the leader of arguably the most powerful nation on the planet. I don't think it's any secret that being president takes an immense toll on a person. Physically, mentally, emotionally, there's a huge amount of responsibility in that role. The impacts of it are quite easy to identify sometimes. If you could, for this, close your eyes and picture Barack Obama when he first took office. He was 47 years old. He served 2 terms, 8 years. And what did he look like when he was done? The physical impact, just it looked like he aged 15 years. It's not an unknown or a new thing for me to say that as you age, your facilities begin to erode. We lose bone density, we lose muscle mass, our reaction time slows, our reflexes are slower, our ability to process information becomes compromised, right? Everything begins to slow down. Our body breaks down as we age. This is not me stating something that is so inflammatory that, oh no, somebody in their 80s is not as mentally, emotionally, or physically fit as somebody in their 30s. If we're talking the ideal or the average, I think we would all agree with that. So why is it such a foreign concept or potentially so offensive to some of you listening to this that you're clutching your pearls because I'm calling out the fact that I don't believe having 2 mid 70 to 80-year-old candidates is what we should have. I think I would prefer to see somebody in their 40s. Oh, at this point, I'd probably take somebody in their 30s just based on the way this country's gone. They're probably more open to what the world looks like now. They're more in touch with what the world is like now. So I think to say that we need to draw a line in the sand, if we're going to say 35 is where you get to enter the game, is it fair to say 65 is your last opportunity? 70? I think I could be sold on 70. I think optimally I'd probably pick 65. 30-year window, get in, get it done. That's your time. Um, and it's not just president. Average age in Congress currently, 118th Congress convened January 23, is 58 years old. Average age of our congressmen and women, 58 years old. Average age of senator, 64. Um, how is it that they're representing us as a nation? The the average age, I don't know, is indicative of the population that is most impacted by the decisions that they're making. Don't know that if the average age of the Senate at 64 is necessarily in touch with what the people most impacted by the policies that they try to instill are doing. I don't think they're in touch with the way that their constituency actually views the world anymore. Um, Again, I think that there has to come a time where we recognize that this system is way out of whack, and skewed in the wrong direction. Politics, what should be a call to serve and instill change, has become a career for a lot of people, um, which will lead me to kind of the next topic that I think needs to change, and that is the amount of time that somebody can actually spend in Washington. Um, the president has term limits. There's two. You get two cracks at it. 8 years. Get in, get the job done. You don't get to sit there forever. Why is it that senators and congresspeople can? Um, and I think the vast majority of people that enter into public office do so with the right mindset, that initially it's about going in and representing their constituency and doing what they feel is best for the American people and trying to make a change and do good in the country. And then, unfortunately, again, my opinion, just that, although I think it may be shared by a lot of people, is they get up there and Washington corrupts them, and they fall prey to, again, politics as a career. Um, it's awful convenient that a position that does not pay make you rich money seems to produce a whole lot of very wealthy individuals serving in those positions. According to Statistica, the median wealth of a U.S. senator, $1.76 million as of 2018, on a job that pays $250K a year. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's more to it than just the salary. There's a lot of money in politics. There's a lot of money in making sure that the right company wins a government contract, or that the right agenda gets pushed through. Explain to me how a relief bill for Ukraine also includes language regarding TikTok. Yeah. Not a politician. I do understand how things work. I understand how business functions. I understand how deals get done, and you don't go from, $250,000 a year to having a net worth of $1.76 million, with a high from 2008 and 2018, so a decade period, in excess of $3 million as the median net worth of the Senate. So again, we can say they're up there trying to do good, but I do think that the good they're doing is for their wallet. So I want to put that number into some context for you. The median net worth of a American as of 2022 was $192,000. That's 10 times less almost than the median net worth of Senate. As of December 2023, the top 5% wealthiest Americans have a net worth of just over $1 million. The top 2%, net worth of about $2.4 million. Median wealth of Senate, somewhere in between those two numbers. That is very telling. So I just realized I've used the word median quite a few times in this discussion, and I think it's important that I fall back and make sure everybody that's listening understands what that actually means. So a median is not synonymous with average, right? Average just takes all of the numbers, totals them up, and divides them by the number of numbers that you had. Median throws out the high, throws out the low, and then gives you, in essence, what the average is. So it is a more accurate depiction because it eliminates the anomalies. So when we talk about the median number, that is more indicative of the general pool. And I know I talked a lot about age earlier, just as a fallback number. The median age of America, 38.8 years. So when you look at 64 in the Senate and 58 in the House, the average age is substantially higher than the median age of the country that these people are elected to represent. I'm not real sure that you represent the interests of your constituency when you are that much older, right? I really feel like right now there are a whole lot of Gen Zers and millennials out there that may be screaming, okay, boomer, and have a reason to, as it pertains to the people that are governing this country. We'll be right back.
I just don't get it. I work hard, I go to school, I pay my bills on time. So why can't I get approved for a new car? It's like no matter what I do, I'm always struggling to make ends meet. My wife and I, we thought we were doing everything right. We saved up for a down payment. We have good credit scores. But the home buying process is just so confusing. We're lost in a sea of paperwork, drowning in a whirlpool of jargon and numbers that make no sense to us. How are we supposed to navigate this treacherous terrain without a guide? Financial literacy is a huge issue, one that affects so many of us. We need help, guidance, someone to show us the way out of this maze of financial insecurity. That's why Financial Foundations of Virginia is here to offer us a lifeline in our time of need, to teach us the skills and knowledge we need to build a solid financial future, to break free from the chains of debt and uncertainty. It's time to take control of our finances to build a foundation that will support us for years to come. Visit us at financialfoundationsofvirginia.org or like and follow on Facebook and Instagram.
And now back to the show. So what is the problem? The problem, in my opinion, is we've created a system that allows people to turn the concept of governing into a lifelong income generation. If we go back to the last presidential election, Biden referenced quite a few times that the system had failed Americans. I hate to break it to you. Joe Biden was first elected to the Senate in 1972. Biden has been in Washington longer than I've been alive. He is the system. What was he going to change in 4 years as president that he hadn't changed in the 40 plus years prior to that? And this is not an anti-Biden rant. right? The American people came out. He was the candidate that we selected as a nation, and so be it. He is the president of the United States. The point I'm making is, how does somebody who has been in Washington, excuse me, I'm sorry, been in Washington longer than most Americans have been alive, and is going to blame the system? My man, you are the pure definition of the system. You have spent the better part of your adult life, and at this point, the better part of your life. He was born in 1942. He was first elected in 1972. He was 30 years old. Again, 50 plus years in Washington. That's what's wrong. 2-year term, U.S. House of Representatives. If you're a congressman, you have to run for re-election every 2 years. A senator, 6-year term. Unlimited number of terms for both the House and the Senate, but 2 years for a congressperson and 6 years for a senator. Then we term limit the president to 2 terms of 4 years, so you can do 8 years as president. So what am I suggesting? Well, I would say let's stick with the 2-year term and impose 3-term limit. So it's 6 years for a congressman. I would say let's cut off the senators from a 6-year term, a 6-year run. You only have to deal with it, a campaign getting reelected once every 6 years. Cut it in half. 3-year term. Give them 2. That's 6 years. We're at 12 years total. Leave the president at 2 terms at 8. 12 plus 8, it's 20 years. You can still have a political career if you can find a way to move from Congress to Senate to president. There is an ascension path. You can move forward. But let's create a sense of urgency to actually get something done by saying you don't get to be there forever. Right? I don't think in any world should somebody spend 50 plus years in Washington in public office. I don't think you represent the best interests of the country anymore. Yeah, I think there are plenty of examples that would show Washington corrupts. By no means do I think I have all the answers, nor do I believe necessarily that what I've talked about here today is necessarily the right answer. I do think it's a topic of discussion that we as a nation have to take on if we're going to move forward as a country and we want to see things actually improve. And that seems to be the American public's overall goal, is we want to make progress. I think progress is counterproductive to the people in Washington, at least the people that have been there. I do think there are some people that, again, that you run for office with the intent to serve and make a difference, and you are good-natured and motivated by the right things when you initially get there. That doesn't hold true the longer you're there. Again, my opinion. I think this is a bigger discussion than what is covered in 20-ish minutes that we're talking about it in this podcast. And this doesn't cover all of the issues that I think are wrong with our system. I want to talk about the fact that I think the concept of a 2-party system and how difficult it is for an alternative candidate to get on the ballot no longer makes sense. Potentially the electoral college is no longer the way that we should be calculating votes. Not saying the concept of electoral college is wrong, but its current structure probably is no longer the correct way to do it. I don't want this to drag out, and I think those are 2 other topics that could fill another podcast, and we'll probably save them for another day. I really would like to hear from you, though. What are your thoughts on career politicians, and should we consider revamping how long someone can actually be in Washington? These are the type of things that we're going to talk about, and they won't all be serious. as this one is. But I'm not going to back off of topics because I'm scared I'm going to offend a listener, or I'm God forbid I'm going to get canceled in cancel culture because a couple days in from the publishing of the first one, and I've had 12 whole people listen to the podcast. So, who am I to get canceled? We have to have open and honest discourse and not be afraid to talk about things because we're scared what the reactions are going to be. And this one I don't think necessarily is all that polarizing. I think the path to move forward, though, is being able to have open and honest conversations about topics, whether it be sharing an opinion on this and soliciting some feedback. And I think I really would like to hear from you guys. Reach out on whatever channel that you're on with what your thoughts are on this. I'd really like to know. But I appreciate you coming back, listening for another episode, hanging out with me for a little while. So let's bring this thing home. And we'll bring it full circle and finish with a little bit more of the feedback that I received. So I was told that I need to come up with some kind of outro since I have the Hello Friend intro. And one of my favorite quotes, and I cannot for the life of me remember who originated it. Can't find it when I've Googled it, but it is affect change. Don't let change affect you. So EFEFFECT. I can't spell tonight, guys. Effect change. Don't let change affect. AFFECT. And I think that has been my favorite quote for a very long time. I think it's very poignant. Be the person that makes the change. Don't be the person impacted by the change. So I think what we're going to go with, because those words are very similar as the outro, will be effect change. Don't let change affect you. Until next time, I'm out.